May you ahodoɔ sɛ nhyehyɛe ɛne mmara ahodoɔ ɛfa nkwadaa yɛdi ho no wɔn hwɛ mfa nyɛ adwuma.
Professor Yao Sechi ede atudwa sɛ NPP amanyoko no ɛyɛ presidential primary so mo kwa akoto abayi di obetu franka no ɔmo hia businessman a obaba be bie nyuma ama Ghana de hye na mum enye technocrat bi ɛna ɔmo hia.
Na abayi ba yɛ Skasam to the Bank of Ghana ye bi pa. Amaneba if you Bank of Ghana ba say a policy rate no yate so papa about 15.5%.
Yebeko etifido mansemunya ntia say dormitories ahodo bi e wo honom school bi eja atomu a enye asemko.
Ensemika we no ho na ye de bra mu say kase bo na ye ka mu say aboafo ekura mu aye specialized this way need fufu na fe need abekwan. Na ye ka mo so so person hwe o DSTV a your channel 360 sanso and the social media platforms no nyina no kaseboy etwegu ewo ho afi mu nsem ni Ghana man pani His Excellency John Dramani Mahama and e kasai pani e kire se efi bro ba ba mu hihya hodo aban na ye no e boa yie papa ni titiru e fa gold e to di fi o man mo de kwa ma hodo bi so o man no ye hye de sika papa bia no see efi bra gold board ba ye no aboye papa amos mosque mining fojo medi omudie no ana se gold ayenya ade kwa manone no ekọ be biese ekọ omani nya so mfaso papa odi nsemu etudwa ewo enkran ha.
And on the issue of resource sovereignty, we must break the colonial mode of large foreign-owned concessions extracting value for the benefit of foreign interests and entities while Africa remains in poverty. And as Sam Jonah said, we must be boldly selfish and claim a fairer share of our natural resource endowments. In Ghana, I'll give you a simple example. We're exercising greater sovereignty over our natural resources. The establishment of the Ghana Gold Board has given us greater control over our gold exports. In 2024, total gold exports from the small-scale mining sector was said to amount to 63 tons. Of this volume, the foreign exchange repatriation accounted for only about 40 tons of the exported gold. 23 tons of forex did not come back. Since the establishment of the Gold Board in April 2025, exports from the small-scale mining sector to date have increased to 104 tons, with 100% of the foreign exchange repatriated through our central bank. Ghana is also increasing the participation of indigenous Ghanaian companies in mining and other natural resource extraction activities. Local content laws have been passed that make it mandatory for non-Ghanaian investors to partner with local companies in all mining and extractive investment activity. Africa's industrialization must be anchored in value addition and beneficiation. For decades, Africa has exported cocoa, oil, cotton, timber, and minerals in their raw form, only to re-import finished goods made from some of these same products at many times their original value. This model has deprived our economies of jobs, technology, and revenue. Consider cocoa, for which Ghana is one of the leading producers. Africa produces most of the world's cocoa, yet captures only a small fraction of the value of the global chocolate market. Similar imbalances exist in oil refining, textiles, and mineral processing. Beneficiation alters this equation by creating domestic industries, reducing imports, and increasing export earnings. Across the continent, encouraging progress is underway. In Ghana, we're deliberately shifting from a commodity export model to a value-added economy, prioritizing agro-processing, manufacturing, and industrial clusters that are aligned with our natural advantages. As part of our reset agenda for economic transformation, we're looking to add value to our exports, such as cocoa, cashews, oil palm, cassava, petroleum, gold, manganese, bauxite, etc.
Na saa enhyiamu kro ya se ye mampanyi editu dwa se esanse ye manufacture niema bebre ewo ye memu hanti ama mabunu no dodo na atu no mutu kwan ekonkrofo aman so wo se ye hu behia se ye mfidi nyuma no ye bepejem atremu ama de bia ye be manufacture niema wo hanom se de be ya emabunu no benya adwuma ye na omaka ye manyimu.
The central question before us is simple. How do we finance Africa's industrialization at the required scale and speed? Industrialization is capital intensive, yet access to long-term affordable finance remains constrained, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises that employ the majority of Africa's industrial workforce. Shallow financial markets, high interest rates, debt pressures, and limited non-extractive investments continue to slow our progress. These constraints demand new thinking and collective action. First, Africa must mobilize its domestic resources more effectively through improved revenue collection, stronger financial management, and decisive action taken against illicit financial flows. Second, we must unlock Africa's institutional capital. Our pension funds, our insurance companies, and sovereign wealth funds manage hundreds of billions of dollars. With the right instruments, industrial bonds, infrastructure funds, diaspora financing, and blended finance vehicles, this capital can be channeled into productive industrial investments. Our development finance institutions, including the Afri-Exim and the African Development Bank, must be further empowered to mobilize private capital and support regional industrial projects. Thirdly, government must actively crowd in private sector investments, public-private partnerships, risk-sharing mechanisms, and credit guarantees. These are essential if we are to finance our industrialization. Your presence here today reflects our shared determination to secure Africa's economic future. Africa stands at a historic turning point. Our generation's defining task is economic independence. Political freedom without economic transformation is incomplete. We can no longer accept an economic model that consigns Africa to exporting raw materials and importing finished goods. That model is a neo-colonial arrangement that is designed to trap Africa in perpetual poverty. It is important for Africa to industrialize on the basis of its comparative advantages. Manufacturing and agro-processing creates jobs, they raise incomes, deepen skills, and anchor inclusive growth. They enable us to retain more value from our own resources and build resilient economies. And yet today, Africa's share of global manufacturing remains low, below 2%. Too many of our economies are locked into low productivity and primary production, compelling millions of young Africans to seek opportunities elsewhere. We must act urgently if we are to change this narrative.
Ghana Statistical Service in penny for the Nsebia Babontin and it's a baby by Yeshahudo Woyeno. Boa amaniama bo ekofom yie pa na bebi a omeduro sesei eye adansie ene ehoniema omuchirimu a eye afie atwam November bosuminum no na adansie ho niema no ototo niema na eye ohamu chimunum ene chipo enkron 5.9% na so na me no kasai atiaba from 4.4% no no kire se eboa yie papa amaso obi plane so besi dan a ne sikasam na nko edija adansifo nso ankwanko esa omo eto dan so no. On a month-on-month basis, inflation was negative 0.2 for December 2025. Month-on-month inflation means how prices changed between November and December 2025. And this tells us that building input prices
fell by 0.2% in December. What this really means is that building inflation continues to cool. In fact, the December year-on-year inflation of 4.4% represents an 8th consecutive drop, and it is down from 5.9% in November 2025. For labor, year-on-year inflation declined to 10.7% in December 2025, down from 12.7% in November. On a month-on-month basis, labor prices fell by 0.9% between November and December 2025. For materials, year-on-year inflation eased to 2.7% in December 2025, down from 4.2% in November 2025. Month-on-month material prices reduced slightly by 0.1% between November and December 2025. For plant, inflation rose to 5.6% year-on-year, up from 5.3% in November, and plant prices increased by 1.5% month-on-month. Overall, the main story is that construction inflation is being driven more by labor and plant pressures, while materials inflation is easing. For government, this is a good time to spend strategically and fast-track key infrastructure projects, including the big push, while targeting the top drivers. The persistent labor inflation also suggests a skills gap, so expanding training for artisans is important. For businesses, we advise you to lock in today's prices and secure medium-term contracts while inflation is low before any potential rebound. For households, with material prices stabilizing, it may be a good time to start or resume your building projects, and you can phase your work to benefit from the reducing cost pressures.
Ene government accountability series na say oswafo a wo hwe adansie ene ho ensem so onmunyafo Kenneth Gilbert Eje ekopie honom na bra wokasa na wotwemu se ene wo hwe se de nkrofo tubata eba kroma ba betna na ama se obi benya baabi pa ede ne tibeto no ho ayeden papa esan se nipa ne bebre honom a wo hwe omasetena mu nsem ne sikampo munya entimi momo entimi pe baabi papa bi mpo anaso mbehan baabi papa bi mpo ede omuti ato na wose ni nyina mu nso ene se na nsen se de eniema ne sikasem akosoro edan han akosoro entini nyina no yade a eha adwene yie wo yeman mu se obi benya bibi papa bi ede ne ti ato anaso benya sikampo ahan dan papa wasisesi anosi yanhwe ya ebedru afei 2050 no ebeje nsemo wokọ miamia bi te se enkran ha kumase ne takrade a orese de nipa ebo peso ho na ano eden into obesre se ne manimu yimpanyufo nhwe na yempe kwan papa bi mfa nhwe mapangu akwam se de be ya saade we no yebetimi aso ano.
Continues to grapple with housing deficit currently estimated at over 1.8 million units. This gap is further exacerbated by widespread affordability challenges which prevent a large portion of the population, particularly low and middle income earners, from accessing safe, secure, and dignified housing. Rapid urbanization has intensified the situation with more than half of the country's population now residing in urban areas, and projections indicating that this could rise to over 72% by 2050. The demand for housing in metropolitan areas such as Accra, Kumasi, Takrade has therefore grown exponentially. Unfortunately, the supply of housing has not kept pace with this demand, resulting in overcrowding, soaring property prices, and the expansion of informal settlements. This scenario underscores the urgent need for coordinated, forward-looking interventions that simultaneously address housing supply and affordability, whilst promoting sustainable urban planning to match Ghana's evolving demographic realities.
Abemba ye shishaba kwa wo yesena be ya o Mexico se betumi agina ene se bank ahodro no busi omde maye no mbetumi ahwe na si hu no akofam Bank of Ghana penny odano Dr. Johnson Esiama ene na pamfo bo homodin ye papa ye fie soro baabi emasisi ba na eba fam ene ge sama fi Bank of Ghana ba a governor Dr. Johnson Esiama ene ade sudwa no e kire se Esiama no kasa yi eye policy rate no na nkeda 18% ebro nyina ko hye to adwene no o magye atum se wo monte so enfamra 15.5%.
The currency's strong performance reflected favorable global conditions, prudent monetary policy, effective liquidity management, and significant reserve buildup. In 2025, the cedi recorded an appreciation of 40.7% against the US dollar, and this is compared with a depreciation of 19.2% in 2024. In taking the policy decision, the committee, the MPC, acknowledged that macroeconomic conditions have improved significantly. This was supported by the tight monetary policy stance, fiscal consolidation, and significant buildup of reserves. Inflation has declined faster than anticipated. Expectations remain well anchored, and growth has strengthened. With stability largely achieved, the focus of policy now is gradually shifting toward consolidating these gains and supporting stronger real sector recovery, job creation, and improved financial intermediation. The latest forecast and 6 months ahead survey-based inflation expectations, which we monitor, these indicate that headline inflation is broadly expected to be within the medium-term target, barring potential spillover risks from upward adjustments in utility prices and commodity market volatility. GDP growth is expected to remain strong in 2026, with the output gap narrowing. This may introduce moderate demand-side pressures. The committee, that's the MPC, judged that current monetary conditions do remain tight relative to prevailing inflation dynamics. Sustaining Ghana's macroeconomic gains will hinge on disciplined fiscal policy, strong policy coordination, and targeted agricultural interventions to contain food inflation while remaining vigilant to heightened geopolitical tensions. Based on the foregoing considerations, the committee, the MPC, by a majority decision, voted to lower the monetary policy rate by 250 basis points to 15.5%. The committee will continue to monitor developments closely and take appropriate policy actions to ensure that the gains from macroeconomic stability are translated into sustainable growth.
Onmunyafo Kenneth Gilbert Ejay so afa wo hwa adansie ene enyuma so editu dwa se eye National Rental Assistance Scheme omode baaye afi 2023 no aboa pa wosi enipa adom wo mu ebebro mpem nan wosi afi etwa mu 2025 enipa bebro mpem mienu ena omunya mu faso ni nyina ene se sa hyewe wo honom se de be ya se okwa han dan advance a wo betua woni skana National Rental Assistance Scheme no ebeboa wo no mu kiremu so asika no mo de ma no enkrofo betua enti ama adwuma no ekoso yi.
The National Rental Assistance Scheme, established by the government in 2023 as a social housing program, aims to facilitate access to rental properties for qualifying beneficiaries by providing rent advance. The scheme is currently being piloted in 6 regions, namely Greater Accra, Bono East, Northern, Eastern, Western, and Ashanti regions. In 2025, the scheme successfully facilitated the payment of rent advance for 2,031 Ghanaians across its 6 operational regions, bringing the cumulative number of beneficiaries since inception to 4,732. I am glad to state that so far, the disbursement recovery rate is about 99%, indicating the government seed money is fully recoverable and in circulation. The program's eligibility criteria, application process, and beneficiary success stories highlight its effectiveness in addressing housing needs and enhancing community well-being, and government is poised to take the necessary steps in the short to medium term to scale up the operations of the scheme across all 16 regions of the country.
Adishimama UTV no nsianka sebo na wuhwe madrama moma yenkogya gbafo nkrato edikan yeba yebeto aso.
Ebusianfo ye san mama kwa babiem ye to ansem no so amamo.
Ye to so na ye call apue mantam na ene da dwumade bi kɔ so o Royal Senchi na ɛhɔ na Ghana mampani abedi e kire obenfu gina na opokwa agyeman ekɔkasa dwumade na se nyina efa National Development Planning Commission fo hyehyɛ ahodo mo aye sɛ da be betumi aboa ama emma ne mma ye betumi adiyie ni kasem do da to dua kirim so ho behia sɛ hyehyɛ ahodo ne mmara ahodo a de abade fa emma ya ho no yebeshi mo kina na de aye adwuma sɛ na be ya emma ya no ebetumi anya fa ho de di mu edi esua de abeyan panipa daachi bi.
There are over 60,000 children living and working on the streets in our country, mainly in the urban centers. Many of our children are not registered at birth. Many more remain deprived in terms of health, education, nutrition, water, sanitation, housing, and protection. Child poverty undermines health and learning and increases exposure to violence and exploitation. These challenges threaten our demographic dividends and aspirations, of course, for inclusive growth. If we fail our children today, we fail ourselves and Ghana tomorrow. The Ghanaian Against Child Abuse campaign continues to mobilize traditional authorities, religious leaders, and families to reject violence, child marriage, and exploitation. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, the Early Childhood and Care Policy Games. This aims to promote the survival, growth, and development of children from 0 to 8 years. The policy platforms early childhood into strategic national priority for sustainable development. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, these initiatives are needed to strengthen and improve collaboration among all stakeholders.
We have identified high-impact, cost-effective solutions that are ready to be put to work. The true measure of our success will be how effectively these priorities are embedded into the medium-term National Development Planning Framework and how they shape Ghana's national vision for 2030 and beyond. We've also been reminded that investing in today's children, especially adolescent girls, is the most strategic choice Ghana can make for its long-term prosperity. When a girl is healthy, educated and protected, she acts as an accelerator for her entire community.
We call on the Minister for Education to strengthen an integrated and updated education management information system, that is the AMIS, to drive equitable educational outcomes. And as you can see, the kids, they really want to progress in life. The challenge identified in the medium-term framework has to do with reducing the number and percentage of children and young children who are not in employment, they are not in education nor training, and also reduce the number and percentage of children who are, or child labor, I should say. So they're not in education, not in employment and training. There are 26% of these aged between 15 and 24. The unemployment, or the unemployed, 32% of these also aged between 15 and 24. And then child labor also recording 28% of those that are aged between 15 and 17. In the rural areas, it's west, we have around 37.
So kopiemu ewo abatuo komisa akachia kwantrefo penye ba no research monitoring and evaluation wadano eye Ura Frederick Tete wode atudwa se jinaya Tamale High Court fo esiye efa pandai abatuo mechere ran ho asesi Supreme Court abatuo egu no mochira the Supreme Court akano eno na EC ebedi so.
Regarding pandai, I'm say anope wie mu na Supreme Court nanu ye koshia wo and the Supreme Court here and say and 28 January and or the ruling paper na yɛn electoral commission no yɛ role ni sɛ yɛ provide court no with yɛ evidence a yɛwɔ nti yɛ provide the court with the evidence a yɛ evidence a yɛwɔ no kyerɛ sɛ ɛyɛ the gazetted results no nti yɛ lawyers gyina yɛ anan mu presented those things no before and then ruling the pie. Now ruling the pie to say MPP for besides say court no enquash the decision of the Tamale High Court. And what panda I say Tamale High Court see yanko ye rerun. And the Supreme Court no net rule 4-1 say sa panda rerun wakwashi ana obugu. Anti sana decision itie anti electoral commission no yedi mraso anti senior mrano be kana judges in the kind no and no idea. It has been a long process after the results were gazetted, you know, NDC4 Ediko Tamale and a Tamale court, you know, a rule say within 30 days, you know, electoral commission now organize a rerun, and our MPP4 also say Omo appeal as well as the sending the court the issue to the Supreme Court for review, and a review no ruling no by, and the woman say the decision of the Tamale High Court, you know, has been quashed, and I say Supreme Court no ebuegu say here say rerun there ebapapanda. I know say Sinhuma has been cleared. Akutia came, it also has been cleared, and then Pandai also has been cleared. Sometimes, you know, and yet cases now but to say way a petition and after the gazetting of the results, you know, and they caught the full length. Some of them, you know, they died the natural death. Some of them, you know, petitioners no cry, you know, almost show interest in the case again. They be out of the home, and you may have cases like that. You see, says at the High Court, no cry, the audits are some no call on my court. It is over time, no, some of them died the natural death.
Kwansha for penny or data credit ports ano Eura James Richmond Quasin or that to judge him say car kwan hudroa Eura Tamaport and Cheta credit port no. Kwaning in us say, is say, near me mood do any other namso echoa bribia. Edifi also epia bribia no. No just a biner who ye pass a hard unit to celebrate yeka say. A bino at the investors be about or my besha boa said ye beya. Ye beya keteka kwine. Edi efi bebia airport wonum Cheta credit port na come ya hudo bibri. Netumi aboa ama niema emu du a edifa takrade port wono. Yamfa fa ka kwan so elefa train kwan so. Sanso and a beboy ye papa aboya kwan hodron so ho eban.
What you are doing now, the cargo must come by rail. We cannot go to ship or by road. Let me put a word for that and say that the cargo must come by rail. So yesterday, investors came to headquarters and they want to link up the ports, the western rail line to the mines so that the cargo will come by rail. When you live here, all the understanding that the vessels we do here, the cargo we ship here must come by rail. We cannot continue to be shipping cargo by road. It's not done anywhere. That is why G20 invested so much. Minus 16, the channel is wide, minus 17. The marine like 20%. Smartly press and trade to deliver. This vessel took back nicely. Thanks to our partners in Costco.
We want to make these companies is ready to invest the best railway corridor line and bring the link back and make sure most of the ores can carry by the rail but few by the roads. The arrival of the Maritime CSP years, the largest bulk carriers ever to dock at any port in West Africa, marks a new era, not only for GMC, but for all our region's maritime and mining industries as a whole. This achievement is the result of a vision pursued with persistence, innovation, and collaboration. The arrival of Manifesto CSP years is more than a technical feat. It is a symbol of transformation. It tells investors that Ghana is ready for large-scale operations.
All of us as Africans, we are tired of seeing raw materials being moved out of Africa without any added value. So please, be revolutionary in your thoughts as you came here to speak. And my delight altogether, you are going to bring this thing down by the railways. Please, as for this one, to get the railways, the instrument that gave Ghana's independence together with this port, oh, this is glory. I'm happy I'm here. We're doing us.
Professor Yao Sechi Beidu and Akupimu Ewa University of Education Winneba were Professor of English and Linguistics Openia Kasa Ede Atuja se a year Kennedy e Japan wahine wono eno sefata se NPPS ahine for deneba said the bebetimi aba be nyuma amagana mebno was your try a doctor for one munim do sikasema lawyer for still o mine yenko babia intimredru say die onim adwuma mu no ye bema na kwanya no ama no aba wade to just say obesre NPPS ahine for say ma omonwe omho na emum no omonwe oman ne daach ho na omfa de osefata emra
every by 20 years no ade ba no nipa mfasa na ho bebre o mu say e sha se kana wo bebre na nipa say wo bia wo bebre ba na nipa fa kan 22 mu awo na fa ye mo fe so twa wo ma hwe mo we on woda atamre say obi oni ba de nko be dan ewulu oman emfa ho lesen na do onu cocaine na do mu de yes na do onu cocaine ama onya be cocaine no ya na ho go so ofa plane ko broji ko no cocaine sa na wato no omedi president Clinton massive na ko fa body president nipa hwe bro etra nipa suban ehwe na nipa betumi aya aboa oman na ya eso ya kansa nyina so yo suban bia eso ya enye nye ne hia ne se Ghana benya mfaso be na afrimu na ba president na bibu ha bata wo ho a emma wonye ankasa osuban ne opesa wo ye nti entumi ha abato no ebe ha next MP fo entumi ankasa ye ancheche ne mamu ye na mgidi se unse ye ofie etumi kasa pa ye ofie betumi kasa pa mamamfo ate ncheche no ase ne hia suban hia pa wa mambom ne ode onibakọ ye ode abo oman nkanko jisa na mavinsity osansa isi yati wiase no ade hapa ne obi ontin fa ne yu nye ne yu ene obi a omra no ototo nase wa kyerese kan de me ne wo ma wo me ye president a wo ye president me ma be vice president ma wo ba nya na odi ne beboa Ghana nanye sana nipa sare de ma no nipa akopa ne nua na beguru nchen nipa oseme de nipa o fata am de be ma no ma me mfa me anka sam relationship ho busua emfa my position ti ono de me se bo me anima na oye campaign makan so a chese ken de o nipa odi ne mra so na obeye ne ebeboa Ghana nya ono na ebebo no ankasa ye to ama Ghana ye hia adwuma ye hia siska be ma o manum ye hia se o manum mra be ye adwuma hia discipline hia law and order obi a no tumi ne yere adi ono between side and ye adwuma yetu ha na ye kra jenne efiri baby ye wasas ye kra mo obi a wa cheso betumi ayesa na yetu ndi ye nsaye se adwuma no on pause ye hwe na ye to abama no enya ye ya hotonti mehwa na Ghana fo behia pa de ubisami a ken na Ghana fo behia no
Abusia for Madaro my home so ni aje abafo nkratwe tosumi no abasisia
Adeshamama yede masese wunya bretwen yen yabe ye to ekase bono eso. Na ekobi e from Gender Center for Empowering Development. Womo na ekase womo chese no kurenie. Bibi koso maga na mo esi etumi hwa ne eka ho asem. Efe eka mama nka bi ho. Eni se abato edi sika wuram ye to vote papa. Esike wura abato mu titiru se bia ye kokoto aba na obi be pridi bi no ye be hwiri sika ma brabo sa twetwe sika sa. Na neku eche se yenya hwe yie papa pesan san hwe ya ede ho akase pa ende be breka bi mamika bi
amanyosem na yesi ekebi maminke bi e de pempuntuo but sani akoye sikasem no emmebu na emma bebre ntumi nyeden enkomu efise sikasem na doso emma bebre nso ne sika no a omode kwakogina empempin so se ma ne kwakope sponsorship a ye de ma mema no kane nkofo ya se o mai dia oye obewinini o nye sika bebrebe nti ye hwese ye be implement affirmative action ni ye be hwese ye democracy no e be fa entoma pa ye frɛ no democracy kabima minkabi amamwo ni dia na che se ensese ye masika bedi kan na eyi enipa ni bi fim nti se Ghana be fa entoma pa fra na ye manyokuo no e wo se yetumi tete ni yie na emma yetumi kasemu na mmambu etumi bam na ye UN said then leave no one behind. Ye nje obia ho obia bebem ama ya hwe ne ye man no ye tumpon ti ye besre say electoral commission ne political parties no emprem year before the next election no ye behwe ne ye reforms atoto akwan ne ye besre Ghana fo ya ye kan se Ghana for kan na ye pe development now pe development now see onipa ne bro t-shirt onipa ne mtu aloy firma no wono no wo oba no wo misa ne say me ha kwan yi ede ne ye befa so aye na wa kire se bia district common fund sika sei na aba na se ne ye de beye no but onu de hu hia enti mesre se ya timamufo so ye besesa ya na montuo aye ne politicians no edidwa wa manyo ho.
So we are putting a lot of money on things that we don't necessarily need to ensure that we inform citizens. And in many countries where you try to discipline this, you address those things. You have to put a ceiling. Because the more we reduce the cost, then it opens up the access for women, for young people to be able to participate. Right? So, and then it also reduces some of the corruption or the illicit money that's also coming into.
Government should also develop and implement gender-responsive campaign finance reforms, including expenditure ceiling and public funding mechanism to reduce financial barriers for women and youth.
Oswafo a wɔhwɛ efisem so ɛyɛ onumunyafo Alhaji Muntaka Mohammed Mubarak. Samra yɛka sɛ Ghana Immigration Service recruitment exercise ɛkɔ no wɔde n'ani akɔ akɔhwɛ kopie mu ɛwɔ Christ the King Catholic Church na hɔ no de to dwa sɛ deɛ wɔde n'ani akɔ akɔhu no deɛ anokwanie bibia ɛkɔ so wano documentation and body selection ni nyinaa ɛkɔ so kama na wɔse esan sɛ ɔmo pɛsɛ periperi yo ɛne fan yo ɛyɛ adwumanti adwuma no moye no selection ni nyina dodo na nam abefo kwan so entinyade a obi beka se bia mede me hu nipa bi be hyemu anase da bi omo se fata bia no ensa ebeka adwuma no.
I'm really happy that the wish of His Excellency the President to see these things done in a very decent and respectable manner has been achieved. That people who opt to serve their country in that process should not be treated as if they are animals. They should be treated with respect and dignity. And I've seen that through the police, the prisons, the fire, and today I'm seeing that of immigration. And I'm really happy that it is going on smoothly. When they come, they get to sit, they get some water, they give them snacks, they take them through the process in a very respectful manner. I mean, this is what we are talking about, that people who want to opt, who volunteer to serve, should not be seen because the numbers are so large and probably we cannot take off. We treat them as if they are not human beings. So I'm happy with what I've seen, and I hope that, as you know, this is the second phase. We have 2 more phases to go. But they have to now write the aptitude test and then do the medicals. I pray that once we've seen this is just about halfway, the rest of the other half will equally even be better than what we've seen. If you come in your basic certificate and your, say maybe your SS certificate, there's some maybe misplacement of letters, you just throw an affidavit and then they let you go. If it is the age, obviously there's nothing they can do about that because the age is capped. So they are persistent people. You know, in the town park, sometimes you come and people are screaming at people, go, 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 you fail, and then those things, and you create panic. It's no longer there. So I'm happy that in their own way, because I remember in all the planning and the discussion, there's nothing like to bring medical team to their own. And in their own way, they've seen that to add that. And it's also helping because I heard that yesterday someone was sick when he came and they had to assist that person and then to
Yakwa sante mantemu amane boy saka free wo kire sa akronfurienfo me kire an robbers bi ha manfo adwene pa wo kunsu ene ne potemu na police for atete o ma masese saka sei yana se yakasa police for saka nipa makon na esusu se sa an robbers nan yi e ka wo mo atete amanfo e wo kunsu ene ne potemu.
Asante mantama police for akeka wo mo ho ama akromfo a omudi etuo ne sekan kokronobo omo atimachi enipa enan na regional police commander DCOP ata osei akoto ene nsamtwerefo e kasa wo chirechire mu no na wo kire se efri afrasei December bosume no ne da toson 7 December 2025 e wo kunsu e wa asante mantama no sa akromfo enipa enan a omususu se bi kura ka ho no wo mo ewie amanfo niema a chese mining companies bia e was am petamono na nipa bi efiri ho no mo aye adwuma mo efiri ho no mo kono mo etimi kwaji wo musika afi wo mo akode pump action bia wo mo edidwane na sisia de a police for ensa so mu a ocheche nsem no say
Ashanti Regional Police Commander per say a brief on suspect 9 ayachi omo in connection with robbery bia esi wo kunsu bronya bosominum December 7th opepon ya mu January 21st e da it also Edunu Bakono. Emra abo enwumre be 11 p.m. Aprosifo wa santimemu ha. Onwa wodi robbery hu dwuma. Eni omunu anuma wo headquarters. E ka bomu e kire ememma 9 yesusu se ono boss akro no ya e course on the 7th December e wo konsu. Emrantia e chi omomudin na didi so e. The odi kind no de yaya seju wadi mfie aduonu nan ne otoso ye frɛ no ata Israel wadi mfie aduasamienu ne otoso miensa ye Victor Jan wadi mfie aduonu nsia ena Stanley Wiafia Kenten wadi mfie aduasa police nhwehwɛ mu kyerɛ sɛ saa mrantia nan omoka robbery gang bi a omowo kunsu ene ne mpatam emra ye kɔhwehwɛ suspect odi kan yaya sedu a etabo ne mrane diamond no ne dem no yenya etuo pump action gun mienu etuo no baako eye complainant a woje ne nsam sika no ne dia yesanso hunu sekan akese miensa mobile phones enum a baako eye complainant na obe report to case ma police ne dia yesanso nya etuo aboba bibi cartridges no aduonu mienu ena sika mpem aduonu mu 9 54,000 Ghana cedis enhwehwemu kyerɛ sɛ December da etosonson no samrantie 9 eni mienu bi eka ho eto hyɛ abrantie bi efrɛ no Kinsley Asare so oni ne nuanom miensa na omu free omu mining site ebe fie ewo kunsu mankra so kwan so eji omu nsem gold ye frɛ no black gold powder no ene omu sika ena afei omu mobile phone ene etuo baako ya toto samrantie ya no na omo jitum se omo na boss akro no sabre omo wo police akache ene niema yenya free omo ho ni nyina ye de ni nyina be kan ho aboa ye hwehwemu abo omo kwadu ewo asandibia
Yeguswa wa Asante Mantemu na Ashanti Regional Police Command Samraye Kase oma your operation bi ewo Asante Mantemu ama womo a enubone omudi hudwa eye ho niema no omaje dodo na efri omonsem
Asante Mantema police sahene ene police for etimi abo homodin pa a fa enrubone a amanfo edi hudwa ene de amabu no so koto anasa amanfo koto enom no omatimi abo apro ahodo a wo nsa akan bia ye beka se wo magege na sesi anam se edoso a enhwehwemu a ewo so wo ye efa sa nduru hu wo maye awie no na wo se wo ekohye no eno ene wo makopie mo kase landfill site a wo matimi ahye ni nyina se da be ya nipa bonefo ensa enko kansa ndrubone ya wo ebenom na no ena Inspector Richard Nkansa wono ye narcotics station officer ewo drug law enforcement unit edema Ashanti Regional Police Command ene nsemtwefo twetwen koma o kire mu sei
ye besere se o mu se obi episka de ne mu benye sika unua besere de ha adwen ena mra no so no ye chewa punishment na no wodin nti mesere se obi a ntwe ne ho de efire ho eye tramadol codeine eno ye cough mixture but eno no emra ma ho kwan se ye ton wo Ghana hanom ena shigra enu a mema efade fama eno so mra ma ho kwan se ye ton omo use no de eye du ba bi a ye do mo ko rehab na amo akofa process nim na omo ton no pa na ya na pimpi itu omo so sapa de wonom no de du ba bi a itu omo fo e de omo fa process bebre mu omo ton no omo na ye target pa de ka cho omo so omo hwe omo yi na mra no ano washi ye chi omo a na de so bi nyam hu twabre kokoba de mo no na so ready say obi a bebi o hye bia no e be hwe na che no ye hwe ma youth no en say adwuma ye no ye so ye de ye tu ye ho ye ku ye ho mama ne say youth na e ba no obi a de be emfa ne hu redu boni e be twe omo afiri no boni ho ne ko ye so ayo
Abrahu sama yesaka every school bia ye friend no Northern School of Business itwantia wono bisco and say eja ato emadabre eye female dormitories ama esuafo be ye ahankono aye ma no omunya babi enfo mani ento omu kire se wonfunya babi enfo muti ento misre omu kire se eja yi eto houses makomako 9 eye Agri Alpha Ali and Agbewa houses a
This afternoon at around 1 p.m. I got wink through the regional director of education that fire had gutted one of the dormitories of the Nobisco in Tamale. Quickly, I decided to call on my regional security to get in touch with the fire service to see what they can do at that critical moment. Though the fire service officials got here, unfortunately, at the time they could get here, the fire had gutted the whole dormitory. The good news is that not even a single student was in the dormitory as at that time. And so, in the midst of all this sad period, we still have to say a very big thank you to God, because none of our students was in the dormitory or hurt in any way at that moment. The one thing that I can see, and everybody around me can see, is that everything, every property of every student within this dormitory capacity of 900 students has been burned down totally. Totally. It's a female dormitory. All the properties, including the beds, you can see for yourself. They have not been able to remove anything. And so it's a very sad situation. And so we are at this moment making a passionate appeal to philanthropists, NGOs, through our sector minister, the Minister for Education, to, as a matter of agency, see what can be done at this critical moment. And so that is a passionate appeal I'm making on behalf of the institution.
Electrical can cause, power fluctuation can cause fires. However, that will be dependent on how robust your system is, your electrical system. And so that is why we always advise that standard materials are procured to do the wiring. Standard materials such as wires and the sockets, everything should be of good quality, so that in case of this intermittent supply of power, the system is able to withstand it. However, if you fall short of this, then you expect to see just what we are seeing right now. So this is not to conclude that it is actually the cause. However, it is not far from being the cause.
With the Asianfo no ye bechi chomo yire pa sanse wo school na bi se beto de yensem bebre wo mo hwehwe bi ye bae no na wo chene bi ni bi atisa ntumi ankonko ba biu ye de kase bo ni si wa wa chotutu sen mame anopa ne anwumre pepso det no ye nim fitititi anopa ne anwumre na e ma ose chi na mo ye de wo no ye hwehwehwe wo sinso ye fitifita me se sa wo sin tutu ama na ka ba ko pempo wo no mu a twitwi so se de be ya eno ko abedan so na wo no aye fete abena
Anyway, a Texas Beauty Parlor and Dreadlocks or no, and now Obumitino, a demand, Mr. Owoso Tium, Capital Hills, Obenado Bakery Qua, Obuti Kama, Dreadlocks and Swa, Oben a fine a day amount. Number no a 0552 962 888 0552 962 888 and a fee clothing pallets a shame atadie or Wakra Central, Lava 4 time when you money didn't show anymore. Abron sign so qua on Sabecano. And Manta de Papa Fee who went to Mr. Bomodiane Court Namaonsa and Camodie. Number near 0271 998 313 0271 998 313. I have somewhere you may me. Abana Bayi Yano Mene.
Ejakwabna.